What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with 7 reasons to avoid buying the Motorola Moto G 5G 2023. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the Moto G 5G 2023, and in this video, I'm going to be going over my top reasons to avoid buying this phone. Now, to clarify, there's a lot of things to like about this device, and the Moto G 5G 2023 is certainly meant to be a more entry-level affordable Android handset. So with that under consideration, there were quite a few compromises that did have to be made in order for this phone to actually fit within that pricing segment. That being said though, some of the features this phone lacks are things that people do tend to expect to find with many smartphones out there. So I mostly want to make this video to go over the various things that we're not getting here so that there aren't any potential surprises if you do end up deciding to buy the Moto G 5G 2023. Now the first thing I want to go over is the display. Now in many ways, this phone actually has a great display, and I will be getting into the reasons why I like it in a second here. But the biggest issue with this display is that it's only 720p. Now in 2023, I think most people expect to get at least a 1080p display with their smartphone, so the fact that it is only 720p is a bit disappointing. And to make that even worse, the display itself is very large at 6.5 inches, so having the display being 720p with a display being this large makes that shortcoming even more obvious. So when you're doing things such as watching 1080p video content, unfortunately you can't watch it in that full resolution. Instead, it's not going to look quite as clear since the display on this phone is 720p. Now on a more positive note, the display is very bright and vibrant, and I do appreciate that it does feature a 120Hz refresh rate, so a very smooth experience when navigating around the phone. That in itself is a bit more of a premium feature and something that I really didn't expect to find with a phone in this segment. I also appreciate that we are getting a hole punch up top for the front-facing camera. So overall, this phone is a nice, big, immersive display. I just wish that it was 1080p instead of 720p. The second reason to avoid buying this phone is because there is no ultra-wide camera. Now on the back of this device, we are getting a dual camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. But unfortunately, there is no ultra-wide camera to be found. Now, if you're not familiar with what an ultra-wide camera does, basically it allows you to fit a lot more of your surroundings into a single photo frame. So this is how everything looks with the standard camera right now. And then if this phone did have an ultra-wide, then we'd be able to see a lot more of what's on this table here. Now the macro camera is nice because you can get very close up and have things be in really good detail. But definitely if we did get an ultra-wide camera, that would really complete things here. And that certainly is a feature that I do find myself using with any phone that does have it, as that can be very useful, especially in situations where you want to take a photo of a large building, or maybe just a lot of the surroundings in the area. The third reason to avoid buying this phone is because it doesn't have wireless charging. Now, wireless charging is a feature that you typically find with more premium Android phones. That being said though, it actually doesn't cost manufacturers that much to include it, so I do wish we did get it here with the Moto G 5G 2023. Having wireless charging in this phone certainly would have also made this phone even more competitive amongst its various counterparts in this segment. And for me at least, I do find myself using wireless charging quite a bit whenever I'm using a phone that actually has it. So I have a wireless charger in my kitchen, I have one on my nightstand, I have one in my office as well, and it is very convenient just to be able to place the phone on that wireless charger. Plus, in addition to that, if for some reason you run into an issue with the power port, maybe it breaks or something like that, and you can't recharge the phone, then at least you have an alternative method to recharge the device. But considering that there is no wireless charging with this phone, we are limited with just the USB-C port as far as charging it goes. Now the next reason to avoid buying this phone is because it doesn't have much RAM. Now with this device, we're getting just 4 gigabytes of RAM, and maybe 10 years ago, that would have been a lot of RAM. But at this point in 2023, I think people expect to get a bit more, especially considering that Android gets more and more system demanding as it does evolve and new versions of it do come out. So this phone does feature Android 13, which is great, but in exchange for that, we do need a lot of power to actually make that operating system function efficiently. Now overall, the lack of RAM hasn't really necessarily destroyed the experience of using this phone, but at the same time, I would have preferred to see at least 6 gigabytes of RAM. And in addition to that, the processor that powers this phone isn't necessarily that powerful. Now, the phone features the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 Plus 5G processor, and along with that, as the name of the phone and the processor implies, we are getting 5G connectivity. Now, getting 5G connectivity with an affordable smartphone is certainly very impressive. I remember it wasn't too long ago that if you wanted to get a phone with 5G, you have to pay a lot of money. so I am glad to see that innovation. But at the same time, just know that you are getting what you're paying for here when it comes to performance. Now, I don't think this phone necessarily is overly slow for the pricing segment it's in, but if you currently have a higher end phone and maybe you just want to save some money this time around and go for something in this particular segment, just be aware that you are going to notice some pretty significant slowdowns compared to what you're used to. Now, for the more fundamental features of a smartphone, this device is plenty fast, so you'll have no issues with phone calls, text messages, going on social media, browsing the web, and doing emails. But for more demanding tasks, such as high-performance gaming, or if you just do a lot of work on your smartphone, or if you're just someone who's constantly on your phone, I can see some potential frustrations coming up in the future with this phone not being the fastest out there. And then I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 6, and here are the scores from that test. So I got a single-core score of 733 and a multi-core score of 1772. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores. Now, there certainly is a chance that the Moto G 5G 2023 will be a lot faster than your current phone, and if that's the case, then this phone most likely will be a solid upgrade for you. Now, the next reason to potentially avoid buying this phone is because there is no USB wall adapter included in the box. Now, here's the box the phone comes in, and as you can see, it is a very slim box, and the reason for that is because there is no wall adapter in here. We do at least get a USB-C cable, if I can get to it, right here for charging and data transfer, but there's nothing to actually plug it into. So you can charge the phone through your computer, for example, if you have one, or if you have an existing wall adapter, you can do that too. But if you don't have either of those, then you will have to go buy a USB wall adapter. Another reason why you might not want to get this phone is because it doesn't have NFC. Now, if you're not familiar with NFC, that's technology used for mobile contactless payments to do tap and pay. So if you want to use your smartphone at a store and you want to go up to the point of sale and tap your phone to make a payment, unfortunately, you cannot do that here with the Moto G 5G 2023. Now, it's really surprising to see that there is no NFC included here with the phone, considering that NFC-based payments are more popular now than ever before. And especially in the last few years, this has especially become kind of the standard overall. So not being able to make payments with this device, or really any device that doesn't have NFC, is a major inconvenience for me especially. That's something that I find myself using quite a bit with any devices that do support it. So the fact that we're not getting that here really is a very big deal. Now, if you currently don't make payments with your phone, then you might not mind that you don't have that ability here. But I can imagine that anybody who currently does that quite often will pretty much write off buying this phone since it doesn't actually have NFC. So I'm really curious to know what you think about that. Do you feel like not having NFC is a deal breaker, or is it more of a disappointment, or is it something that you literally don't care about at all? I'm really curious to know. Another downside with this device is that video recording is limited at just 1080p for both the front and rear cameras. So it would have been nice to see 4K video recording here with the phone, especially since nowadays most people do have 4K TVs, and it's certainly nice to be able to record video at that resolution and then display it on your TV at your TV's full potential. But unfortunately, video recording is just limited here at 1080. Definitely check out my full review video though of this phone on the channel, as in that review, I do have a variety of different photo and video samples from all the various cameras. So at least when it comes to that 1080p video, you can take a look at that and kind of decide for yourself if you feel like you want to go for a phone that does have 4K video. And I guess it's especially disappointing there is no 4K video recording here with the phone, considering that we have gotten Moto G series devices in the past in this segment that actually had that feature. So Motorola kind of downgraded us by removing 4K video recording with most of their G series devices several years ago, and it doesn't seem like they have any plans on bringing it back. But on a more positive note, I do still feel like the Moto G 5G 2023 is still an excellent value and a phone worth considering. I just think that you need to know what you're getting into prior to getting this device so that there aren't any potential surprises, because the last thing you want to do is buy a smartphone, set it up, go through that whole process, and then realize that one of your favorite features is missing here. But of course, for a phone in this more affordable segment, you should expect that you're not going to get every feature out there, because if that wasn't the case, then why would anyone spend $1,000 on a smartphone, for example? So you certainly are getting what you're paying for here, and in many ways, the Moto G 5G 2023 delivers a lot more value than I even expected prior to testing out this phone. But I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.